Hello, everybody, and welcome to Leveraging Web APIs for Infrastructure Management using FME. Today, your presenters are Dave Campanis, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Dave Campanis. I'm a strategic tech support expert at Safe Software, and my job is basically helping our bigger customers get what they need done with FME.
Awesome. And my name is Javita Chan. I'm a technical support specialist on the desktop side, and you can find me through cases and on the community.
Awesome. And before we dive into things, if this is your first time in live stream, just a few tips here for interacting with us. You can use that emoji button on the bottom middle there. Share your reactions with us as we go. We'd love to see them. If you do have any questions throughout, we encourage you to drop those in that questions tab there. Javita and Dave will take turns keeping an eye on that throughout, and then we'll also have a live Q&A period at the end. So make sure to get any questions you might have in there. And you can use the chat as well as we go here. Let us know where you're tuning in from now. And at the same time, you can also leave any comments during the webinar in that chat panel. If you do have any audio issues throughout, you can click that button on the bottom left for 4 simple troubleshooting steps. And I'll pass things back to Javita.
Thanks, Elizabeth. On today's agenda, we'll be looking at an overview of FME infrastructure management. In our first demo, Dave will be covering an example of connecting to Autodesk Tandem's REST APIs. And then next, I'll be showing an example of uploading a model to Bentley iTwins. Lastly, Dave will take us away with the demo using a template to extract floor plans from IBM Trirega into Esri ArcGIS Indoors. Finally, we'll end off with some resources and Q&A period. And that being said, as Elizabeth had mentioned, please do feel free to drop in questions in the question panel, and we'll try our best to get to them or have questions at the end.
And at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn off our webcams just to save on some bandwidth for the demos coming up here. And we'll see you on the other side for live Q&A.
Just starting off, we'd like to hear a little bit from you guys. A poll will be coming up. Which of these programs have you worked with or are interested in working with in the future?
So if you just click that polls tab on the bottom right, you'll see the poll populate there, and share your answer with us in that tab. We'll give everyone a few moments here as the results start to trickle in. Looks like we have folks using a variety of these different programs here today. And folks, when you have left your polled response there, you will also be able to see the results come in live there with us.
Thanks, folks, for voting. We'll move on to the next slide then. Every day, more data is moving from on-premise files and databases to web applications. Using FME and web APIs, you can access the data in these new applications just as you do in your local files. So before we really get started, let's talk about what APIs actually are. Often people throw around the word API and we start to accept it without really thinking about what it is. So what API stands for is Application Programming Interface. And it contains a series of web calls that you can make to a server to perform operations. Essentially what it does, it allows computer programs to talk to each other. In this webinar, REST and SOAP APIs will be discussed. And they are types of APIs, while newer applications will use REST. Today, I'll be interacting with APIs using FME's HTTP caller transformer. A little bit about our company. We are Safe Software, and we produce FME. We're located in Surrey, BC, Canada, and we've been around for over 28 years now across many different organizations across the world. While we ourselves are a software vendor, we do have partners that offer services all over the world. We also boast a very active community of over 16,000 users, so please feel free to join in on the community and to ask questions and get answers. When we talk about the FME Enterprise Integration Platform, we're talking about all of these applications. Starting on the left side, FME Desktop is where you are able to connect to your data sources manipulate them or transform them, as you can see with the blue transformers, or what they're called, and write it to where it needs to go. FME Server really allows you to scale up that usage to allow other users in your organization to make use of these workflows without ever having to know how to author these workspaces. FME Cloud is essentially FME Server on the cloud, and FME Mobile allows you to access FME through your phone. I'll add one note that while we have all of these platforms, desktop is required to actually create your workflows. This is a fun chart we've got of FME's growing support for formats over the years. On the bottom left there, from 1995, our bread and butter was really in GIS and CAD in the beginning. And then over the years, we've expanded into raster, 3D, BIM, all the way to the top up there with indoor mapping and more. With that, I will pass it over to Dave for the first demo working with Autodesk Tandem.
Hello, today I'm going to talk a bit about Autodesk Tandem and how you can work with it with FME. So Autodesk Tandem is Autodesk cloud-based digital twin solution. It's initially populated from Revit or IFC data, but we can extend it with some user-defined parameters. So let's take a look at Tandem in the wild. So this is your main interface where you create your facilities or you interact with your facilities. If we open up one of these facilities, this dormitory sample, just double click that, and we can see we have a 3D model of a dormitory here. If we can zoom in on it, zoom out of it, we can move it around, different viewpoints, etc. If we click on one of the features, we will see that we have the attributes from the Revit coming up on the right-hand side here. So all the information that was in Revit is in the Tandem model as well. We have here a picture of the entire model. If we want to filter out that model to look at only things that are of interest to us, we can open up the filters button on the left-hand side here. And then we can look at things like, oh, we just want to look at the interiors, or we just want to look at the shell. And that makes it easier to navigate around your model. These filters can be saved as bookmarks. And those are up here. So I've saved the bookmark with just the rooms of this model, because that's what we want to work with today. And so if we click on the rooms, we can see the design properties, again, all the information from Revit. And once we've selected features, we could also bring up an inventory view. And this just gives a tabular view of all the features you see on screen. It's just an easier way to view the data. Okay, so according to Autodesk, Tandem is currently a descriptive twin. This means that it's a sort of a static model of the facility. We've created the model, we can look at the model, but there's not a lot you can do to manipulate the model within Tandem at the moment. So what we're going to show you today is how FME can be used to improve the connectivity of Tandem, so we can sort of boost it up the scale of our digital twin maturity models. So on the FME Hub, we have two transformers that work with, designed to work with Tandem, the Tandem Feature Extractor and the Tandem Updater. You'll see here that there are a number of fields that have to be filled in when using these transformers. Most of them have to do with the authentication to talk to Tandem and also the location of the Tandem model. Now, to get these credentials, we're going to have to take another step, and we are going to have to sort of prepare Tandem to be worked with FME. And the first step to that is we need to go to Autodesk Forge. And you'll need a Forge account if you're doing this on your own. They're free to get. You just sign in and it will create a free account. Once you have the account, you can create the apps by go to My Apps button here. Now I've already created an app that will to work with this Tandem for the demo, but I'll show you how to create a new one. Just quite simple. Hit the create application, give it a name, call it test app. And it's created this application, and it's created a set of credentials for this application. So we have here a client ID and a client secret, and there's little buttons here. You can just copy that to the note or to the clipboard if you want. These only get shown once, so if you need to get another set, you've forgotten or something, you can hit the regenerate and regenerate another set. I would recommend copying these and storing them to like a safe location. We also have the app name down here. You can enter description if you want. And then you have down here API access. Now, by default, it grabs all of them, and that's fine. We're gonna keep that. And then you can hit save changes. If you've changed any of this, you can delete the application at the bottom. So we are going to save the changes. There we go. And go back to applications. So now we have a secondary app here. Now, after adding the credentials to the transformer, if we go to the client ID, the client secret ID that we've gotten from the app page for Tandem, we also need to add these to the Tandem model. So what we're setting up is sort of a chain of credentials where as a user, the FME user is kind of registered with Ford, and we're also going to register the Tandem model with Ford as well. So there's a kind of a two-step process that gives you access to this model through the API. So to add the application to Tandem, you click on users here. You go down to the bottom. You say you want to add a service user. In there, you add the service ID that you copied, and we'll just call that test app. And down here under permissions, we'll give it a full manage because we want to manage the data back and forth. And if we go add, now this new app has access to this model, and any transformers that you key in those credentials for that application will have access to this model. Now there was another thing here you have to fill in on the transformer, and that is says the Tandem project URN, and that is sort of the web location of the model, and that can be found from Tandem. If we look at it in the browser and we go look at the address window up here, we'll see that there is a section of the URL here that starts with URN. That value there you can copy and then paste into your transformer. So we've created a Forge app to communicate with the REST API. For the demo I'm about to show you, what we're going to do is add some information from an Excel file here to the rooms in Tandem. We're going to put in the room type, the occupancy status, and the actual occupant information from that data into Tandem. Before we do that, we have to create these parameters to store the data. The original data is coming only with the Revit parameters. We're going to need some new parameters to store that information in. So again, we go back to Tandem, and we go to the Manage tab, and we go to the Parameters tab here. And here we can add parameters. You can set the name, the category, the content, what type they are, etc. I've already added the parameters here that we're going to be using: the room type, the resident name, and the occupancy status. Now, once your parameters have been created, you need to add them to the template, or the schema, if you will, of your features. So we're going to go look at the template, and we go down to rooms. You'll notice that we've added those three parameters. So now once this is done, we are ready to go within Tandem. And if I go back to the dormitory sample, and if I click on any of these rooms, we'll see that under the general category here, we have the occupancy status, resident name, and room type, and they are all blank. We have not yet filled all this data in. So now we're ready to run this update, and we're going to do that through FME. So here we have a workspace that we are going to use to update the rooms from that Excel spreadsheet I showed you. I'm just going to start it right now because it does take a while to run. And we'll get it started while I talk about it. So basically, we are using the Tandem feature extractor. I've filled in all the information here, the credentials and the location of the project. It also has this optional setting here where we can set specific Tandem IDs. And so if we're only grabbing like a few features and we know their IDs, we can request their IDs, and that makes the requests a lot smaller. In this case, we're grabbing about 300 rooms, so we're not going to list them all individually. We'll just grab the entire model. We're going to run a tester where we're going to check and see, just make sure that the room number has a value. So we're filtering out everything that doesn't have a room number value. And then we're also reading in all the records from that Excel file, which also have a room number attribute there. We're going to merge on those two room numbers. And then we are going to rename the Excel data to the appropriate naming structure for Tandem. And that naming structure is basically the category of the parameter and then the parameter name separated by a period. And then we're going to send this up to the Tandem updater. Now in the Tandem updater, you see you have the same credentials, the client ID, secret ID, we have the location. We have a few more things here. One, we have to say what attribute on the feature coming in holds the Tandem key. And that is a unique key in Tandem that every feature has. So that way we know what feature to update. Luckily, that isn't on an attribute that is supplied by the Tandem feature extractor. So we've already had that. And then here we can just pick the attributes on the feature that we want to add into the update request. So we've grabbed those three features. And that's pretty much it. As you see, the workspace is finished now, so we can have a look at the data. So if we switch back to Tandem here, now if we look at the list of rooms here, we'll notice that the occupancy information is status is set, the room type is set, and also the residence. Let's see if I can make this a bit bigger. There we go. And we have all the resident names. So this model has now been updated from that Excel spreadsheet. Now I want us to go back to the workspace a little bit more and sort of look inside these Tandem transformers. And you see, if I look inside the transformer, there's a fair bit going on here. It's just kind of a multi-step process to work with these APIs, and you'll find this happens a lot. In this case, our first access is we're using the HTTP caller to send off the request. We're using the JSON flatteners and JSON fragmenters to sort of interpret those requests as we get back. But our first request is to the Forge API rather than the Tandem API. And what we're getting there is we're setting up our credentials and we're getting a token back. And that token will allow us to access that Tandem data set that we are pointing to. And that's kind of how the whole, who's supposed to be able to access the various models is managed. Then we are querying that model. We're going, well, how many actual models do you have? And then we take the first model. We next need to get the schema information because all of the data inside Tandem is stored with very short and unique attribute names that bear no resemblance to what actually shows up on the screen. So we have to request the schema that basically maps between the display names and the actual names, and then we apply those. And then we can actually go out and get the data itself, apply that name mapping, and then finally output to the user, both the feature and the schema. Say if you're writing out to dynamic mode outputs, it's nice to have the schema output along with that. So that's basically that. The feature extractor, Tandem updater, Tandem updater is very similar. It still has to do multiple requests and mapping. So that's kind of why we like to put this in a custom transformer for you. It just makes it easier to use. But I think you'll find working with other web APIs that it is often a multi-step process. At least you'll have at a minimum the authentication step and and then the rest of the steps that you will need. There we go, back to the slides. So we assume we've updated our room parameters. In summary, we can read and update Tandem models. You've got to do a little prep first on your Tandem, both to create the parameters and to create the Forge API to handle the credentialing and limiting access to your model. And here's some resources quickly on Tandem and Forge and the Tandem's REST API, and also a link to the FME Tandem transformers. Okay, and back to you, Jovita.
Thank you, Dave. Our next demo will be looking at connecting with Bentley iTwin. In this demo, we'll be looking at connecting to Bentley iTwin's REST APIs, in particular, the synchronization and exports and digital twin APIs. We've only just really begun in looking at connecting to iTwin, so today we'll be looking at our first, and at the moment only, custom transformer that Dave has built and has made it available on our FME Hub for anyone to download. While it's just the start, we hope it serves as a reference for what else you could do connecting with APIs and how to do so. The demo we'll look today is with this custom transformer, and we'll be uploading a Revit file to populate an empty model in iTwins. And I'm going to start backwards and show you the output first. So let me get the screen share started. So here is our Duplex A Revit model. If you've seen any of our other webinars, you may be familiar with this model, which is a sample from Building Smart. It is currently sitting on a road because it doesn't have a real location, nor does it actually exist. So for today, this will be good enough for us. Currently, I have the roof selected, and you can see the information there. And something really cool we noticed was by sectioning a plane, you can take a look at the model. So, maybe let's look at the floors. But this is the file we'll be working with today. Keep it sweet and simple. So very similar to how Dave worked with Autodesk Tandem, there is a little bit of setup and preparation required in order to connect with the APIs to begin with, because you need to be able to tell it what model you're working with and just information regarding the app that you're connecting to. So if I go through this tab list, you'll first need to register your application. I won't go through all the steps, but I will just check off our synchronization and exports, as well as our reporting, our digital twin management, not reporting and insights, and this will be a service. So once you register your application, you'll be able to get your client ID and client secret. The next step would be to create a sample iModel. And in this step, we're just creating an empty iModel. And the reason for that is we need the iModel ID. And once you've created your blank iModel, you'll be able to go into Show IDs to get that information. None of this needs to be remembered as well. The custom transformer documentation does outline all of these steps, but I just thought it'd be nice to walk through them. And then finally, once you have uploaded your Revit model through the iTwin model uploader, you'll be able to go and create a named view, so you can view it through iTwin's default or built-in viewer. And that's where we saw our initial model here. So let's go into the workspace now to see how all of this works. So David said his workspace was pretty simple, but mine is, I guess, next to it, dead simple. I've just got a creator, which is most of our transformers you'll see are in blue, and these custom transformers are in green. If I open up this transformer, we'll see there are parameters for us to fill out. So far, what we've got is our Revit file, the format of our file, which is Revit. And then here's where we got all that information earlier with the iTwin client ID, client secret, as well as the iTwin model ID. We also, in this particular transformer, require a login to Azure. And the reason for that is with this API, the limitation is that you can only upload through Azure. So we've got this connection to basically upload a temporary file, and then the transformer will remove it at the end once it's successfully uploaded to iTwin. So I'll hit OK here. I won't be running this workspace currently because it does take a few minutes to run. And this workspace, and only this workspace, will not be provided as part of the workspaces, just because it won't be very useful to you with my configurations. You'll need to grab all this information to fill your own. And this creator just kicks off the workspace. So what is happening in this transformer? Well, firstly, it's uploading the file through Azure before iTwin grabs it through a URL location. It's going to pull the job every 10 seconds or so to let us know whether the import is done. And then finally, when it has arrived at its destination, it deletes the temporary file and cleans up all of those connections. So that's kind of the main what's happening behind there. And if you wanted to use this workflow as a resource, let's say you want to connect to iTwins yourself and do something else, or expand on the transformer, we can right-click on this transformer or this custom transformer and click Edit, and that's how we get this second tab up here, or I guess third, because we have our Start tab. And just zoom in a little bit. Exactly the same as the workflow that Dave had shown. It's got a couple of different steps and different calls, that being the upload to Azure, generating the authentication token, creating the connection and running it, and then finally, in this last HTTP caller, cleaning it up. So that's this transformer. And when you open up with a blank workspace, you're really just adding it by just typing in iTwin. So you can type into the canvas and pull it up there. With that, we will head back into the slides. And while I'm doing so, I would just mention that because this is kind of our first stab at it, we don't have a lot of transformers just yet connecting to iTwins, but we do plan to create more. And because their API is just so expansive, there's just so much to it, we won't be able to do everything. So please do feel free to use them as references to make your own connections and connect to the API. So this slide is just a summary of those requirements and approximately where to get them. So that was the client secret and email, as well as the model ID, and then the Azure account. And there is just a screenshot of the transformer. So what else can you do with Bentley iTwin APIs? So we only use 2 of them. There's quite a few, as you can see listed there. And we use the digital twin management and the synchronization and exports. You'll see that there's one for administration, which will allow you to set your access controls, your projects, as well as your users. Events allow you to work with webhooks. Reporting and insights allows you to work with OData, analysis, calculations, and classifications. And the validation I noticed also included clash detection. So these might be things that you might be interested in working with in Bentley iTwins. And they're quite well documented as well. So these are some of the resources for working with Bentley iTwins. The first link there is just a link to our FME hub, which is where we share our custom transformers, in which you could do so as well if you create a masterpiece connecting to an API and would like to share it with the public. Then the second one is for registering your application. And the last one there leads straight to Bentley's APIs and their documentation around that. So the summary points, I think you probably already see the pattern, but there are a few common requirements of creating an app in order to connect, to get that client ID and secret. And sometimes it does take a little bit of learning. You will have to read the API documentation in order to understand and work with it. And I think that's just kind of part of it that you would have to do anyways if you're working with the API or just doing it manually. With that, I will pass this back to Dave to work with IBM Triga and FME.
Okay, next step, we're going to talk about IBM Triga. So Triga is IBM's facilities management application. It has a SOAP API that can be used to extract its records. And SOAP is it's another web API. It's similar to REST. It's the main difference from FME's point of view is that we're talking to it in XML instead of JSON. I'm sure there's a lot more going on underneath the hood, but from my point of view and from your point of view, for the user's point of view, it doesn't really matter. It's mostly a question of the format that the information is being passed back and forth in. So there, let me switch to a view of TRIREGA. So this is the TRIREGA interface here. There's a lot of information. I mean, it's a complete facilities management, leasing management. They have all sorts of tools in TRIREGA. It's very big and very complicated, but we are going to just concentrate on floor plans for now. So if we go to the menu here, we can go to portfolio, and we go to location hierarchy. And here it's got all the various facilities in this demo data set. I'm just going to look at one building here, Charlotte Watson, and we're going to look at the first floor. If I click on the first floor, it comes up with a list of all the rooms that exist on this floor. So if we click on one of these rooms, it brings up a second screen. And here it shows all the information about the room. Primary phone numbers, there's a picture of the room, so it's some sort of kitchen, square footage, all the information that a facilities manager needs to know about that room. It's even got a little location graphic here, which teases us a little because we go, oh, cool, we can get geometry from TRIREGA, but no, you can't actually. So in TRIREGA, the geometry is stored separately in a CAD or Revit file, and I have those files, so I'll go take a look at that. Now this is a CAD file that has been integrated into TRIREGA using their CAD integrator tool, and what that tool does is it creates some, oops, we do not want to do, there we go. It creates some special layers in the file that all have the TRI prefix. And we're just going to turn off all the other layers except for those. Let's turn all those off. Oops, and we want to turn that layer back on. There we go. Cool. So if we get there to the layers, that we see that we just have some very simple information here. The rooms are just simple topologically clean polygons, and so is the floor. Now, this information is linked in the AutoCAD file so each of these rooms is linked to that TRIREGA record that we showed on screen. And FME can read those links. So that's kind of how we can extract both the geographical or the geometrical information as well as the records. So we have two transformers in the FME hub to work with TRIREGA. The first is the TRIREGA connector, and this is just a general connector to TRIREGA. It allows you to submit an XML query, an XML SOAP query, and will return you the XML results back. It's very simple. Unlike the previous examples, there's no setup required to connect to TRIREGA. The SOAP API is built in, and the authentication is generally simple authentication methods. A lot of times basic authentication will work. But it sort of depends on how TRIREGA is being set up. But you can use one of the FME sort of built-in web connection authentications to connect to that. The one thing you will need, though, is you will need a login from the TRIREGA administrator to access the database. And then our other transformer here is a TRIREGA record fetcher, and this is the one you end up using the most. And it takes a TRIREGA ID of a record, then the host and connection information, and then will return all of the record information back to you as a FME feature with attributes. So on FME Hub, we also have, as well as those transformers, we have a template workspace that we developed with Esri that will import the TRIREGA floor plans into their ArcGIS Indoors geodatabase format. There's a whole process that goes through to do that, but if we look through at the workspace, there we go, workspace is here. compared to the last workspaces, this one is a little bit more complex, but it's doing a lot of things here. Basically, it's reading the AutoCAD, reading the TRIREGA layers from the AutoCAD file. It's digging down and extracting that TRIREGA ID from the AutoCAD features. It's using that ID to fetch the records for each of those rooms, and then it merges that record information and outputs to the indoors geodatabase. But it's also got to do a lot of work with formatting the data into the appropriate geodatabase schema and hierarchy as well. But if we look at, and I'm not going to run this can take quite some time, but if we look at the results of this workspace, we can see that we have an ArcGIS geodatabase here. We have one floor brought in with all the room information. And if we look at this particular room, that was AF07, which matches the same one we were looking at in TRIREGA here, that much of the information, or as much information as we need, has been brought through. So we know the unit ID number, the foods, we know its use type, its name, etc., what level it's on, its capacity. So we've gone from just the basic geometry in DWG, we've merged it with the TRIREGA records, and we dropped it into ArcGIS and filled in the fields that are available to us in ArcGIS Indoors. Now, I just did want to pop back to the workspace for a second. As with the other connectors, there's a lot going on inside these transformers. There's a number of calls to the API to get the schema and the information back, and just to find out what we need to be requesting. So, and a lot of times, if you want to connect to an API, and if we already have the custom transformers, it's a good idea to go looking for them. Perhaps we've built one, or some of our users have built one. If you have built a connection to an API and you think it might be useful to other people, especially if you found out it's fairly complex, please feel free to share your custom transformers with the world through the FME Hub. We're happy to see them. So in summary, basically the API calls can be complex, but creating a hub transformer simplifies things for the user. TRIREGA information is stored in multiple places that have to be merged together to make use of them. And yeah, FME has the tools to extract the TRIREGA information from the AutoCAD or the Revit data sets that they reside in. Okay, and here's a few resources that might be useful to you. We have the TRIREGA to ArcGIS Indoors documentation. That's actually maintained by Esri. We have the FME TRIREGA transformers and templates you can get from FME Hub. And then finally, there's a link to IBM SOAP API documentation. That's the documentation with the API. Tells you everything you need to know about it. And back to Jovita.
So here are some next steps. Now that you're all experts in working with APIs and FME, you can contact us at info@safe.com or on the community. We are often on there as well, and you can also access help from our partners as well as the greater community. Then you can download FME 2022.1 as well as the webinar workspaces, save the one that I had where you'll need to add your own configuration into the parameters. If you have never used FME before, please go get your free trial. Really easy to download and just get started playing around. And you might discover that you can use FME for other things as well. And lastly, apply the workspaces to your own data. And we've just dropped a link there for a tutorial for getting started with APIs.
Awesome. And as a thank you for you all joining us here today, we do have a community badge code. Today's code MFASW, and I'll drop that in the link in the chat now. If you are not yet part of our FME community, we encourage you to check it out. It's a great place to network with other users alike and gain solutions to your data challenges. Additionally, save the date for the peak of data integration coming to Europe this next year, September 4th to 6th in Bonn, Germany. And check out our upcoming and on-demand webinars. We have over 300 safe.com/webinars. And spatial data for the enterprise for dummies. This is the ultimate guide to spatial data for the enterprise, and we now have it available in ebook form. I will drop the link to this in the chat if this is of interest to anyone. It's a great resource. And with that, it does look like we have some time remaining here for some Q&A. So we'll turn back on our webcams and take any questions from the audience at this time. Awesome. Does look like we had a question here in the question panel come in from Roberto, and it looks like, Dave, you addressed that in the chat. Anything to further elaborate on live here by chance?
Yeah, the question was basically about moving information from Tandem out to ArcGIS Online. Tandem currently does not allow us to access the geometry. It's strictly an attribute level access through their API right now. That said, Tandem is a relatively new product from Autodesk, and I expect them to make major improvements as we go along. So as soon as they improve their API access, we will update or add more transformers to work with Tandem.
Awesome. And while we do give everyone a chance, in case you do have any questions in mind, to type those in, we did have a couple in mind that we thought would be of interest to folks on hand here. Javita, I know you had one saved there that we might want to address.
Yeah. So our whole webinar is about making interacting with APIs easy. So why do some of those workspaces look so complicated? Maybe if Dave would like to answer.
Yeah, in this case, easy is a relative term. APIs are dealing with web APIs is much simpler than dealing with a physical file format. You have a consistent sort of a way of accessing the APIs. Like the APIs, after you deal with a bunch of them, they all, especially the REST APIs, they all have the sort of similar capabilities and the similar forms that you use to access them. So that makes it quite simple. As well, from a simple point of view, our HTTP caller transformer is a lot easier way to deal with web calls than, say, programming in Curl or Python would be. So that's another side of the sort of simplicity of things. And then, like I said, for another layer of simplicity, once you've sort of done all that hard work of interacting with the API and getting something done, you can then wrap that up into a custom transformer to use within your organization or within your further workspaces, or to share out an FME hub, so you can sort of share it with the world.
I will add that I am newer to using APIs, so using Dave's custom transformer, I was able to connect, and I didn't have to know exactly how those calls were being made. So if anyone's put off by that, the custom transformers do help a lot. And after you've done all the hard work, you can share it with others, and then they don't have to go through all the processes as well. Easier to maintain too, I would hope.
Awesome. Any other questions we might want to address here this morning? I will mention in the meantime as well, if you do have any questions that pop up after the webinar, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us. As Javita mentioned a little bit earlier, info@safe.com. We're happy to chat about anything data. Awesome. And just one last call, Javita and Dave, any other questions that we might want to address before we wrap up here today?
I think we covered everything.
Awesome.
Yeah, but like I said, if questions come up, or if you've run into APIs that you think might be useful to the general SAFE community, feel free to drop us a line, and we can always look into those as well.
Yeah,
And if you get started
absolutely.
with like Autodesk Tandem or TRIREGA or any of these, and there are certain processes you're looking to do, or you need help, you're struggling, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just dropped the link in the chat as well to download the free trial of FME if you have yet to check that out. And Upgrade .2 is now out. And if you're not a part of the FME community, once again, community.safe.com. If you do have a moment to fill out our webinar survey here today, it just takes about 15 seconds. It's just a couple multiple choice questions, and we really appreciate any feedback that you can provide us because it helps us improve the program. And with that, a big thank you to our presenters, Javita and Dave, here today. Thanks so much for joining me, and to our audience. We really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.